Yo, did Amber Heard hire her psychologist from Taobao? Looks like she may be halfway to losing this case, and Johnny Depp's lawyers are using the temporal pincer movement to attack her expert witness. What up? Thank you guys so much for your support. For the first time in our almost 3-year history of this channel, we have reached 1 million views on a video. So a big shout out to our old fans who have been supporting us for this long, and a special shout out to our new fans for subscribing. So help us do that thing with the like button to push the algo. Johnny Depp's lawsuit is getting better and better, but due to the judge's previous engagement, we won't see Depp and Heard in court again until next Monday, when Amber Heard will be cross-examined by Depp's lawyers, and trust me, there will be blood.
I drink your milkshake.
So, this week, let's have a look at how Amber Heard and her witnesses fucked up a case that they actually should win. And yes, they should win. Because defamation suits are one of the most challenging to win from the plaintiff's side. Which is why, even with all the same evidence, Depp lost his battle in 2020 against the British Sun newspaper. But this time, it's different. Because of the witness testifying for Amber Heard, and most importantly, because she didn't buy our online English course at 25% discount. God damn, no wonder homegirl is losing. And you don't want to be a loser like Amber, now do ya? Do you? Then buy our shit and be a winner at English.
Just do it!
So, in this episode, Johnny Depp's lawyers use their expert logic and a lot of patience to completely own Amber Heard's psychologist on the witness stand. And I've broken it all down into 3 parts, just for you. Now the first attack is like a warm-up, making the psychologist feel nervous, but not enough to let her know that something's about to go down. The second one is a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of her testimony. But the third attack is something extraordinary. Do you remember that movie Tenet? Well, Depp's lawyers actually used the temporal pincer move from that movie to destroy Amber Heard's psychologist. So put on your logic caps and prepare to watch to the end of this video, because when I reveal how ingenious their lawyers are, your mind will split into pieces. Now, with each attack, I will first show you what the psychologist said, and then how the lawyer launches his offensive. Now, this first clip sees forensic psychologist Dawn Hughes' first day of testimony for Amber Heard's team. It's originally 7 minutes and 37 seconds of uninterrupted testimony, but I've condensed it into 1 minute. And what you'll see is Johnny's team only objects twice, but they never object to the psychologist directly. See if you can figure out why.
You concluded that Amber Heard used psychological abuse and some reactive physical violence, I think I heard you say. Is that correct?
Objection leading.
Overruled. Can you please explain to the jury what you meant by that?
Yes, that is correct. Amber Heard reported to me some of the behaviors that she used that were psychologically aggressive. The name calling, the putting him down and calling him very bad names and insulting his fatherhood, and she was very shamed and remorseful about that. She also indicated using minor forms of violence, pushing, shoving, throwing objects. We see that a lot with women when there's not proportional force. Women are more likely to throw objects. And then the more severe act of punching him, which a punch falls in the more severe category, and the context, as she explained it, was that he was coming after her sister and she stood in the way and she punched him.
Does that make Amber Heard a perpetrator of intimate partner violence?
Objection leading.
Overruled.
So that was one of the tasks that I had to consider. That was one of the hypotheses that I had to consider. And given all of the other data, that was not my opinion.
Napoleon Bonaparte once said, "Mon frère, never interrupt your enemy when he is making mistakes. C'est vraiment." When Dawn Hughes made a gender-biased comment in her testimony, Johnny's team stayed completely silent. Until the following day, under cross-examination, when Depp's lawyer grilled her on her lack of testimonies for straight male victims of IPV.
Isn't the reason that you used the pronouns that you did that you almost always testify on behalf of a woman?
That's not correct.
You don't even remember the last time you testified on behalf of a man.
Well, I don't testify on behalf of someone. I testify as to the results of my evaluation. I frequently treat and assess male victims of childhood sexual abuse who are coming into treatment for abuse by their Boy Scout leader, by their coach, by their teacher, by a trusted adult. I see them in therapy. I see them in forensic matters, in criminal cases. So I treat and evaluate men all the time.
I didn't ask you about treatment. I asked you about testimony. When's the last time you testified on behalf of a man?
I testified recently in a deposition on behalf of a man who was traumatized because he was wrongly convicted.
And then he pulled the rug out from under her when he referenced her deposition from 6 weeks before.
At the time of your deposition 6 weeks ago, you couldn't remember a single time you had testified on behalf of a man.
I testified in my deposition that I testified in a case of a man who was wrongly convicted about 20 years and suffered physical violence in prison, and I detailed the traumatic effects of that happened on that gentleman.
All right, why don't we take a look at your deposition? Page 78, line 8. So you can't recall a single instance where you were hired by the attorney representing the male in an IPV matter, correct?
In an IPV matter, not in a trauma matter or a child sexual abuse matter.
Okay, so that's the distinction. You don't have any recollection of ever testifying on behalf of a male in an IPV matter. You testified in a case where one male is alleged to have engaged in IPV against another male.
Correct.
All right. And the only testimony that you remember is the same-sex couple, right?
There were multiple same-sex couples, I believe, that I testified
That you testified in court at trial.
I believe so, yes.
All right, but you didn't remember that in March.
I did remember that in March.
Okay.
In the end, it was revealed that she had never testified on behalf of a male victim of IPV in a straight relationship. Depp's lawyer already knew she had made those mistakes in the past, and he stayed silent during her testimony, only to use those mistakes against her in the present.
Gotcha, bitch!
Pointing out to the jury that Dawn Hughes is inexperienced and biased as a witness. Depp's lawyers are now planting the seed to execute the temporal pincer movement later on. Now for the next clip. Fun fact, I have actually been on a jury before, and if I were to see the following testimony, I'd intuitively think, oh snap, Shannon Curry must have been wrong.
Did Dr. Cohen provide Ms. Heard with a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder?
No, he did not.
Did he diagnose Amber Heard with histrionic personality disorder?
No, he did not.
This is a classic lawyer technique. As Cassandra Clare once said, the best lies are based on truth, at least in part. But Depp's lawyer saw right through this, and he used expert logic to allow Dawn Hughes to dig her own grave, burying her credibility.
And you testified yesterday that Dr. Cohen never diagnosed Ms. Heard with any personality disorders. You remember that?
Yes.
Dr. Cohen's deposition testimony reflects the fact that he doesn't make diagnoses, correct?
Correct, and I asked him specifically, did he have any indications that even if he doesn't, as his practice, use them, does she meet criteria for a personality disorder? And he told me she did not.
All right, so you asked him specifically with respect to a topic you haven't disclosed in your expert report, and then he made a conclusion that's reflected in no document.
It's reflected in my notes. It's reflected in his notes about what he's treating. He's treating the symptoms. He's not focusing on the diagnosis, but he is treating the symptoms.
So, when Amber's lawyer asked,
Did Dr. Cohen provide Ms. Heard with a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder?
No, he did not.
on the first day, Depp's team could have objected to Dawn's testimony on grounds of hearsay, because although Dr. Cohen was deposed, he did not testify in court. So how could the jury know exactly what he said? But just like Napoleon, Depp's lawyer said nothing. And he later pointed out that Dawn distorted the truth, because although Dr. Cohen did treat Amber, he did not diagnose her with BPD because he's not qualified to. It's not his job. This makes Amber's psychologist look bad, yo. And in addition, Depp's lawyer presses the offensive when he points out that Dawn ignored the notes from other doctors that treated Amber that she didn't agree with.
Now, you testified that you approach a forensic evaluation with, I think you said it again today, a healthy degree of skepticism.
Correct.
This skepticism didn't cause you to conduct interviews with, for instance, Laurel Anderson.
Right, I did not speak to Dr. Laurel Anderson.
And you chose not to speak to Dr. Laurel Anderson because you disagreed with Dr. Laurel Anderson?
That's not correct. She was a couples therapist that they sought. They had 4 couples sessions. She did have a long, evaluation or interview with Mr. Depp individually and with Ms. Heard individually.
So you didn't interview Laurel Anderson, and you understood from her deposition that Dr. Anderson didn't believe Ms. Heard to be a victim of spousal abuse?
I believe those were her words, yes.
And you also understood from her deposition that Mr. Depp had not had a very long history of being violent with any of his wife or women.
That she said that as well.
I know that you testified that you reviewed medical records.
Yes,
You know Ms. Heard had a personal nurse, Erin Filati.
correct.
You didn't interview Ms. Filati either.
I did not.
You know she spent time with Ms. Heard on a regular basis during her relationship with Mr. Depp.
Correct, I had her clinical notes that I reviewed.
Right. And you reviewed her deposition testimony. And you reviewed the nursing notes.
Yes,
But you relied on everybody else's notes.
And there are some things that I disagreed with, like I disagreed with Dr. Laurel Anderson about it being mutual abuse.
Right. So the stuff you disagree with, you disregard, and the rest you keep, correct?
Well, that's not correct.
But that's what you did.
That's not correct.
Right.
So now, Dawn Hughes holds gender bias, distorts the truth, and is unprofessionally biased against those who don't agree with her. If you're the jury hearing this, what would you think? Because to me, she's biased as fuck. Her ego and lack of objectivity is not what an expert witness should be. How can you decide whether or not people's notes, which is technically evidence, is suitable for your report? You can agree or disagree based on what? So the final clip is the most ridiculous shit ever. After she said this, the internet dropped her Google rating to 1 star. See if you can catch the ridiculous moment.
Almost every person that she was in a film with, there would be those barrages of the consistent accusations of infidelity. And we saw that on the Australia pictures, the Billy Bob. He was one person that he continued, to berate her about having an affair with. That's what obsessive control looks like. I'm aware that there is, testimony in this case that, Mr. Depp decided to leave because he didn't want to be violent. So I think he did leave in times where he didn't want an altercation. He did leave and then came back and continued the altercation. So leaving wasn't the defining variable. The problem was that, with this obsessiveness and this perseveration that he had, the fight would always come back. But Miss Heard knew he was always going to come back, and he was going to start the interrogation once again. There was a time when they were in the trailer where he was accusing her of a woman hitting on Amber in his obsessive jealousy. On that incident when Kelly Sue was accused of hitting on Miss Heard, and they went back into the trailer, Mr. Depp performed a cavity search.
Do you see what is glaringly wrong? I bet Napoleon has a big shit-eating grin on his face right now. Because this next video is the best moment of the entire cross-examination. Prepare to have your mind blown to pieces.
Times yesterday, you used language about assessing Ms. Heard's relationship with Mr. Depp. You remember talking about that?
Sure.
You can't assess a relationship without talking to both parties, can you?
You certainly can get a lot of information from one party, absolutely.
But
and especially when it's buttressed by other documents, including 4 years of therapy records and couples therapy records. You can get a lot of information based on those documents and that contemporaneous reports of the relationship.
Respectfully, I didn't ask whether you get a lot of information. I asked whether you can assess a relationship without talking to both parties.
I believe you can. There are certainly limitations inherent in that, but you certainly can.
You talked to Ms. Heard for, approximately 30 hours, right?
Correct.
How long have you spent with Mr. Depp?
I did not spend any time with Mr. Depp. It was my understanding that he did not sit for a psychological evaluation.
In fact, you never met Mr. Depp, have you?
I have not.
But you purport to be able to assess the relationship between Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard?
But I also read Mr. Depp's transcripts of his testimony. I watched his deposition testimony. I reviewed his medical records. I reviewed his text messages. So it's not necessarily totally blind. I did have information, although I'm not making a conclusion about Mr. Depp himself.
Is the standard now not necessarily totally blind? That's how you assess the relationship? If it's not necessarily totally blind, I can assess it?
No, we assess as clinical psychologists relationships all the time.
Johnny Depp's lawyer handled this like a pro. They barely even objected during Dawn Hughes' testimony.
Sometimes I think he did leave in times where he didn't want an altercation. He did leave and then came back and continued the altercation.
Dawn Hughes spoke as if she actually observed Johnny Depp doing these things. Even her delivery is emotional. She's not speaking from the perspective of an expert witness. She's speaking like an eyewitness, yo.
Kinda sus.
But she only knows this fool through notes, and the lawyer got her to say it in court. She never met this guy.
I did not spend any time with Mr. Depp. I did not spend any time with Mr. Depp.
Johnny's lawyer allowed her to testify and paint a picture in the jury's minds as if she was there when it all happened. The lawyers sat silently and allowed her to make these mistakes. Then they destroyed Dawn Hughes' credibility with one line. She never even met Johnny Depp. And she arrogantly claimed that she can assess someone purely through reading what somebody else wrote and ignore what she doesn't agree with.
What kind of shit is that?
So after I heard this bullshit, I decided to do some digging. And here's what I found. Check this. The American Psychological Association considers giving a professional opinion on a public figure without examination in person to be unethical.
Oh, snap.
Someone might want to slip this to Johnny Depp's lawyers. So, in the end, Johnny Depp's lawyer executed the perfect temporal pincer movement in this trial. He attacked what she said in the past and in the present at the same time. So, If it were you sitting on that jury, knowing everything that you know now, how would you feel about Dr. Dawn Hughes?
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
So now, to the jury, she is arrogant, professionally biased, and deceptive. Just like that shit you find on Taobao. What is presented is not exactly what you receive. Unlike Shannon Curry, who's creamy, spicy, and just so damn good.
Yum.
Now in our next episode, we're gonna sort through the mountain of lies that is Amber Heard's testimony. What has been called the performance of her life features bad acting and several failures to remember her lines. Pure greatness. Also, it seems like Johnny Depp has found a new special friend.
Objection leading. Objection calls your hearsay leading. Objection leading. Objection leading. Objection
really
hearsay.
wonderful.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
He might be the only thing she don't object to. Now I suspect their constant PDA in the courtroom might be what's tripping up Amber's stage performance. I mean testimony. So until then, remember to like, share this with your friends, and I'll see you on the flip side. Peace!